Well, we start tonight with it was one of Nottinghamshire's most shocking scandals in living memory. The sexual abuse of hundreds of children in care, it became the largest strand of a national inquiry which was led by Professor Alexis Jay. Now, on Friday, it will actually be a year since a whole string of recommendations were made to the government. But tonight, Professor Jay tells us that its victims appear to have been let down by a hugely disappointing lack of action. And she's calling on all political parties to include her recommendations in their next manifestos. Well, this exclusive report now from our social affairs correspondent, Jeremy Ball.
The children's home that put Nottinghamshire at the heart of one of Britain's biggest public inquiries. Girls and boys were sexually abused at Beechwood in Mapley for decades. Professor Jay heard evidence from 350 victims who'd been in the care of Nottinghamshire councils. Other hearings covered abuse from churches and residential schools to Westminster and the internet. Now, a year after her final recommendations, a new plea to the government.
Just get on and do it. I and so many others, including victims, have spent 8 years of their life trying to ensure that children will be made safer in this country. And what could be more important than that?
The hundreds of people who came forward as victims in Nottinghamshire will also say, a year on, isn't it appalling it hasn't already happened?
Yes, well, I think they're already saying that, not just in Nottingham Council areas, but across the piece.
Do you agree?
Yes. Appalled is probably not my language, but it's hugely disappointing.
Her inquiry recommended changes that Nottinghamshire survivors had been demanding for years. Better support and access to their childhood records and better protection for a new generation.
This government has risen to the inquiry's challenge.
The Home Secretary accepted the need to act on most of those recommendations, but Professor Jay's worried they'll be watered down because the government's still deciding how to move forward. And a year after her landmark report, she says nothing's changed. You must be immensely frustrated that there hasn't been tangible action yet.
Yes, I am. This just isn't good enough. I would like all political parties to put in their manifesto a commitment, a clear commitment, to deliver the recommendations of my public inquiry final report.
One strand of the inquiry focused on the former Leicester MP, Greville Janner. Lord Janner died shortly after being charged with a string of offences which he strongly denied. Some of those allegations weren't properly investigated for several decades. Professor Jay found that was part of a pattern, reputations put before children's safety. That's why she wants a new law known as mandatory reporting, where responsible adults could face prosecution for failing to disclose suspicions of abuse.
The government has initiated a consultation on this. Now, we did not think that was necessary. We think it's far too urgent. It was almost unanimously the priority of victims and survivors.
Have they been let down?
With the information we have, the answer is yes.
The Home Office says it's now finished taking evidence on mandatory reporting and that it's still engaging with victims and stakeholders to tackle a horrific crime. Parliament's due to be updated next month. Jeremy Ball, BBC's Midlands Today, Nottinghamshire.
Well, I'm joined now by Maxie Lee, who runs Support for Survivors, I think I'm right in saying, in Nottingham.
Yes.
Maxie, thank you so much for coming in.
You're welcome.
You gave evidence to that child abuse inquiry. Do you feel let down?
Tremendously let down, and so do the people that I support as well. We were actually talking about it today in our drop-in service, that we just feel incredibly let down after all the years of the inquiry.
What's your priority now then?
My priority is the mandatory.
Yeah.
But it's got to be that mandatory reporting is the top of the agenda. And I also feel that for those people who are the whistleblowers are able to report in a safe and supported place as well.
Why is the mandatory reporting so important?
So that our children aren't being let down. The longer that mandatory reporting is not put into place, more and more children are either going to die or the abuse is just going to continue and be long-lasting.
I think the government would argue that it is working hard behind the scenes to, find the best way to put things right. Do they just need more time?
No. Why do they need more time? The inquiry was 8 years. Professor Jay laid out all her recommendations and they're still not listening to her. So what more time do they need? How much more public funding is going to go into this? It's absolutely outrageous and ridiculous.
OK, well, Maxie, thanks very much indeed for coming and speaking to us.
You're welcome.